Hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm bringing you the next episode of Tiểu San's journey. The scenery of Sapa appears gently in the early morning mist. A thin veil of fog drapes softly over the small houses nestled along the hillside, over the terraced rice fields still holding onto the lingering breath of the long night, and over the winding paths that lead into the village. The space is so pure and refreshing that one only needs to take a deep breath to feel an indescribable sense of calm and serenity. Amid that breathtaking backdrop, Tiểu San stands out in her vibrant dress against the lush green of the mountains and forests, her light footsteps seeming to blend into the embrace of the earth and sky. Hai stands beside her in a blooming flower garden, where layers of colorful blossoms intertwine into bright patches of color. Their laughter rings out crisply, echoing into the vast open air. It all feels like a slow-motion film scene, recalling the memorable spring trip from the previous episode, where they explored together, experienced new things together, and captured precious early-year moments side by side. The image of the nearly 1 kilometer-long mountain tunnel vividly returns to mind. Back then, each step taken inside the cool heart of the Rocky Mountain carried a mix of thrill and excitement. The golden lights reflected on the stone walls, forming long glowing streaks that stretched endlessly ahead, making the journey both slightly nerve-wracking and deeply fascinating. Tiểu San had softly gasped at the grandeur of nature, while Hai playfully teased her to ease her sense of awe in the vast space. Then came the traditional outfits they wore, each hand-embroidered pattern meticulously crafted, each bold color standing out against the blue spring sky, all blending into a picture rich with Highland charm. They took photos to mark the beginning of the year, capturing radiant smiles and sparkling eyes filled with joy. Those moments were not merely souvenirs of a trip, but imprints of companionship and shared steps along the way. But the journey had not yet ended. The following morning, as the sun gradually rose higher and the first rays of daylight pierced through the thinning mist, the two continued exploring the tourist area, which had become more crowded than the day before. A lively atmosphere filled the entire space. Laughter and conversation blended into a vibrant symphony of a new day. Camera shutters clicked continuously, preserving moments for visitors from all over. Groups of young friends posed along stone steps, small families held hands as they strolled, and children's cheerful giggles echoed around the small square in front of the cultural performance area, making the scene even more animated. Multicolored flags fluttered gently in the breeze, while rows of souvenir stalls displayed a variety of delicate handmade crafts, forming a picture that felt both warm and bustling. While Tiểu San was absorbed in admiring the carefully arranged small gifts on the wooden shelves, from brocade bracelets to traditional fabric dolls, she suddenly froze when a different sound pierced through the surrounding noise. It was not laughter nor cheerful calls. It was the sound of sobbing, broken, frightened, and filled with panic, coming from behind a flower bed along the walkway. The sound made her immediately turn around. Amid the constant flow of passers-by, where everyone seemed busy with their own joy, there stood a small, lonely figure. A little girl about 5 or 6 years old, wearing a tiny pink jacket, rubbed her reddened eyes with both hands. Her face was streaked with tears, her hair slightly messy from frantic headshakes. Around her were hurried adult footsteps, passing silhouettes that seemed too preoccupied to pause long enough to notice the fear in her eyes. Tiểu San stopped in the middle of the crowded stream of people. The excitement of the visit instantly softened, replaced by a quiet worry creeping into her heart. She turned to Hai, her voice soft but certain. "Hai, I think she's lost." Hai followed her gaze. In just a brief moment, he too recognized the child's isolation in the sea of people. Without hesitation, he quickly stepped closer. Though tall and imposing, his movements were gentle. He crouched down to the little girl's eye level, his voice warm and slow, careful not to frighten her further. "Sweetheart, why are you crying?" The little girl hiccuped between sobs, her breathing uneven from panic. Her trembling lips tried to form words through the tears. I can't find my mom." Amid the bustling and lively atmosphere of the small square, the panic of a tiny child stood out in a way that was painfully striking. The crowd continued to move back and forth, hurried footsteps seemingly unaware that a fragile little heart was trembling in fear. The girl's choked sobs felt lost in the sea of noise, and Tieu San's chest tightened at the sound. The excitement of sightseeing for moments before quietly stepped aside, replaced by a deep and genuine compassion that crept into every beat of her heart. Without hesitation, she knelt down to the child's eye level. From up close, Tieu San could clearly see the reddened eyes swollen from too much crying, the teardrops still clinging to the tiny lashes. She gently reached out to wipe away the streak of tears rolling down the little girl's cheek, her movements slow and tender, as if even the slightest force might cause the fear inside the child to shatter all over again. Her voice softened, small and warm within the noisy space. "Do you remember what color your mom's shirt is? What's her name?" The questions were asked calmly, not rushed or overwhelming but steady, like guiding a small ray of hope forward. The little girl tried to steady her breathing, though hiccups still interrupted her words. Through tearful pauses, she explained that her mother was wearing a beige shirt, her hair tied neatly at the back, and that they had been standing near the performance stage earlier to take photos. Her voice trembled as she recalled the moment she turned around and could no longer see the familiar figure beside her. The excitement she had felt at the start of the outing had suddenly turned into confusion and fear when she realized she was alone in a sea of strangers. Tieu San listened to every word. Though concern flickered in her eyes, she did her best to remain composed so the child would not grow more frightened. Hai, standing beside them, quickly scanned the surroundings again. But in the dense crowd and wide open space, finding a woman in a beige shirt at that very moment seemed nearly impossible. He gave a small nod and firmly suggested they take the child to the tourist management office to ask for help announcing her mother's name. It was the quickest and safest solution in such a crowded situation. Without delay, Hai gently lifted the little girl into his arms. His movements were careful and steady, as though he wanted to pass on a sense of protection. At first, she instinctively clung tightly to Tieu San's hand, still shaken by fear. But when she met their kind and reassuring eyes, her grip gradually loosened. Tieu San walked beside them, one hand resting softly on the child's back to comfort her, the other gently smoothing her slightly tangled hair. The path to the management office was not far, yet amid the crowded flow of people, each step felt longer because of the shared worry weighing on their hearts. Tieu San understood that the most important thing now was to keep the child calm. She began talking continuously, careful not to let silence give fear a chance to return. She told the girl about the vibrant flower garden she had passed that morning, about blossoms of every color swaying in the breeze. She mentioned the gentle horse she had taken photos with the day before, playfully adding that the horse had been shy at first too, just like her right now. She spoke lightly with a touch of cheerfulness to make the story feel closer and more comforting. Then she smiled and shared that when she was little, she had once been frightened after getting separated from her family in a crowded market. She had cried, thinking she would never find them again. But everything turned out fine, because adults always look for their children and never abandon them. The words were not grand or elaborate, but they were enough. Gradually, the little girl began listening instead of drowning in her sobs. Her crying softened, her hurried breath slowly becoming steadier. She looked up at Tieu San, her eyes still wet but no longer filled with overwhelming panic. She even asked a few small questions about the flower garden and the horse, as if holding on to those stories to push away the fear inside her. Amid the bustling crowd of the tourist area, the sight of Hai carrying the little girl while Tieu San walked beside them, gently talking and soothing her, created a quiet yet deeply warm moment. The joy of their spring trip was still there, but it had transformed into something deeper and more mature. They were no longer just visitors enjoying the scenery. They had become people willing to pause their own journey to extend a helping hand to someone in need. And as said from the very beginning, this journey was still continuing, with unexpected turns waiting just ahead. At the central information area, where the visitor assistance desk was located, the atmosphere was noticeably quieter than the bustling square outside, yet it still carried the distinct urgency of a crowded destination. Hai quickly briefed the staff on duty, his voice clear and composed. He described the little girl's appearance, explained where he had found her, and requested that an announcement be made to locate her parent as soon as possible. The coordination happened swiftly and smoothly, as if everyone understood that every passing minute was crucial for a small child. Just seconds later, the microphone echoed across the vast tourist area. The voice was steady and unhurried, yet strong enough to capture everyone's attention. We are currently assisting a little girl, approximately 5 years old, wearing a pink jacket, who has been separated from her mother. The parent is kindly requested to come to the central information desk to pick her up. Once again, the announcement repeated, carrying over the sounds of footsteps, conversations, and music drifting from the performance stage. During that brief wait, Tieu San gently held the girl's hand. She could feel that the small hand was still slightly trembling, but it was no longer gripping tightly in panic like before. Hai stood beside them, scanning the surroundings, ready to step forward at the first sign of someone searching anxiously. Within minutes, a woman appeared from the walkway leading into the square, her face filled with panic. She was running while looking around frantically, her eyes darting as if searching in desperation. Her face was pale with worry, her hair slightly disheveled, and she was wearing a beige top, just as the little girl had described. The moment her eyes landed on her daughter standing by the information desk, it was as if strength returned to her steps. "My child!" Her voice rang out, choked with emotion, a mix of relief and lingering fear. Hearing her mother's voice, the little girl immediately turned around. In a single fleeting second, her tense expression dissolved. She burst into tears again, but this time they were no longer tears of fear. They were tears overflowing with emotion at the sight of the most familiar person in a sea of strangers. She slipped from Hai's hold and ran straight into her mother's arms. The mother dropped to her knees and opened her arms wide, embracing her daughter tightly, as if loosening her grip even slightly might mean losing her again. Words of comfort mingled with her breathless gasps from running, her hands constantly stroking her daughter's hair and checking for any injuries. The scene caused several passers-by to slow down for a moment. After regaining some composure, the mother stood up, still holding her daughter close. She turned to Tiểu San and Hải, her eyes filled with gratitude. Her voice trembled. "I only turned away for a moment, just a moment to take a photo. And when I turned back, she was gone. Thank you both so much. Without you, I truly don't know what I would have done." Her words were not long, but they carried all the fear she had just endured and the immense relief of finding what mattered most. Tieu San smiled gently and shook her head, brushing aside the formality. To her, it was simply the natural thing to do in such a crowded place. Hai also replied softly that anyone in that situation would have done the same. Tieu San watched the mother and daughter embrace once more, and an unfamiliar feeling rose within her. It was not only the joy of having helped someone, but also a deep emotion from witnessing a family bond restored after a few short minutes that had felt endlessly long. Amid the majestic mountains, the lively tours, and the vibrant surroundings, this moment held a special meaning, simple, yet touching the deepest part of the heart. As the mother and daughter prepared to leave, the little girl still clung to her mother's hand but did not forget to turn back. She gave a small wave, her once frightened eyes now bright and clear. That tiny wave felt like an unspoken thank you, causing Tieu San to stand still for a few seconds. She watched until the two figures blended into the crowd. Hai glanced at her and noticed the lingering emotion in her eyes. Gently, his warm voice rose above the surrounding noise. What are you thinking about? Tieu San smiled softly, not radiant but thoughtful. She looked toward the square, where people continued enjoying themselves, and replied gently, I was just thinking. This trip isn't only about having fun. We can also do something meaningful. Her words were simple yet sincere. Hai nodded, his gaze softening as well. Amid the steady flow of people moving in every direction, they held hands and walked just a little slower. Without needing to say more, both understood that moments like this were what truly lingered long after a journey ended. The distant mountains remained vast and majestic. The flower gardens still shone brilliantly under the sun. Laughter and conversation filled the air as if no moment of worry had ever occurred. Yet perhaps the most beautiful moment of that day was not captured in any sparkling photograph saved in a camera, but in the instant they paused along their journey to help a family find one another again. A simple, quiet moment, yet one powerful enough to make the trip feel more complete than ever before. The afternoon gradually drew to a close as the sun slowly sank behind the rolling mountain ranges, leaving soft streaks of orange and gold across the sky. The sunset fell like a thin veil, bathing the vast expanse of mountains and forests in a warm glow. Rooftops faintly visible in the distance shimmered with a honeyed hue, and the flower gardens that had been vibrant in the morning now appeared gentler beneath the fading light. The familiar chill of the highlands slipped quietly through each breeze, carrying with it a sense of peace after a day filled with emotion. Amid that scene, Tieu San gently leaned against Hai's shoulder. The gesture was not showy or dramatic, just a natural leaning after the moments they had shared together. Her eyes rested on the horizon where the sun was slowly disappearing, while the image of the mother and daughter embracing at noon still lingered in her heart. She spoke softly, her voice quiet yet thoughtful. I feel like today was even more meaningful than yesterday. Her words were not meant to compare the joys of the 2 days, but to acknowledge a new feeling that had quietly blossomed within her. If yesterday had been filled with lively laughter, eager footsteps exploring, and colorful traditional dresses standing out among the mountains, then today was a day that made her heart grow still. A day when happiness came not only from admiring beautiful scenery, but from pausing in time to care for someone else. Hearing her, Hai gently tightened his fingers around her hand. The squeeze was not strong, but enough to convey empathy and shared understanding. He looked ahead, where the evening light was gradually fading, and replied slowly, because the greatest joy is when we bring joy to others. His words were simple, unadorned, yet in the quiet space they felt deeper than ever. Tieu San smiled softly. She understood that this trip, from the first steps through the mountain tunnel, to the photos captured among the flower gardens, to the unexpected event that morning, had woven itself into a complete journey. Every small detail had contributed to the meaning of their spring excursion. Around them the crowd continued to move, other visitors taking advantage of the fading sunset to capture photos. The sound of camera shutters clicked again, mingling with murmurs of laughter and conversation. But for Tieu San, this moment carried a distinct shade of meaning. She was no longer looking at the scenery with the eager eyes of a tourist, but with the appreciation of someone who had just come to understand the value of sharing and compassion. Their spring trip would continue. There would be more destinations ahead, more sparkling photographs to take, more flowing dresses dancing in the mountain breeze. Yet now, those things were no longer the sole purpose of the journey. After today, the trip had gained another layer of meaning. A gentle lesson about kindness in crowded places, about timely care amid life's hurried flow, about how even a small action can change the emotions of an entire family. Tieu San took a deep breath, feeling the scent of grass and the coolness of late afternoon. The lively excitement of the morning had settled into a quiet warmth spreading within her. The image of the little girl waving in thanks, the image of the mother holding her child tightly, all of it etched itself into her memory, blending with the golden hues of that day's sunset. And perhaps it was that very moment that made Sapa, in Tieu San's heart, More than just a destination of poetic landscapes, more than a place to capture beautiful photos at the start of the year. It became a land of memories warmed by human connection. A memory beautiful not only for its majestic mountains and radiant flower gardens, but also for the simple, humane moments that unfolded amid the bustling crowd.
Xin chào mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Hôm nay thì mình đưa tới với mọi người video về câu chuyện của Tiểu San và Hải. Như mọi người đã biết thì Tiểu San và Hải thì đang ở trong đầu năm, thì Hải đã đưa cô về nhà người thân, nhà anh em họ hàng của tao á, và sau đó cả hai đang có một chuyến du lịch cùng nhau đi ở Sapa. Sapa thì là một khu du lịch, một thành phố du lịch khá là nổi tiếng ở Việt Nam. Và hơn nữa thì ở trong tập này thì cả hai đã giúp cho một bé gái đi lạc. Trong cái quá trình đi du lịch thì đã giúp cho một bé gái bị đi lạc. Vậy thì liệu mọi chuyện tiếp theo sẽ ra sao, diễn biến như thế nào, và hành trình tình yêu của Tiểu San và Hải còn tiếp diễn tới đâu thì mời mọi người đón xem ở những video sau mọi người nhé. Còn video hôm nay thì mình xin phép được kết thúc ở đây. Tạm biệt mọi người, hẹn gặp lại mọi người trong những video sau. Nhớ đón xem những video tiếp theo ở trên kênh mình mọi người nhé. Mình tạm biệt mọi người.